He fainted when I walked down the aisle at their wedding. My husband pushed me off a cliff for my stepsister, but karma struck when I returned from the dead. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, grab a warm cup of tea and get comfortable. I'd love to know what time of day you're watching this video. Please comment M for morning, A for afternoon, or E for evening. Now, let me take you into this story. They say your life flashes before your eyes right before you die. But standing on the edge of that cliff in Big Sur, with the wind whipping my hair into a frenzy and the ocean roaring hundreds of feet below, I didn't see my life. I smelled Chanel No. 5. It was faint, buried under the salty scent of the Pacific and the musk of my husband's expensive cologne, but it was there. Distinct. Floral. Cloying. It was the scent my stepsister, Sabrina, had worn since she was 16 years old. It was the scent that gave me headaches. And now, it was clinging to the lapel of Garrett's jacket as he pulled me into what I thought was a loving embrace. It's breathtaking, isn't it, Mallory? Garrett's voice was right against my ear, but it lacked the warmth I used to crave. It sounded hollow. Mechanical. It is, I whispered, shivering slightly. But it's getting cold, Garrett. Can we go back to the resort? We have that dinner reservation. He didn't let go. His grip on my shoulders tightened. It wasn't a hug anymore, it was a restraint. My heart started to hammer against my ribs, a primal warning bell ringing in the back of my mind. I tried to pull back, just an inch, to look at his face, but he held firm. We can't go back yet, he said, and his voice dropped an octave, devoid of any emotion. We have to finish this. Finish what? I asked, my voice trembling. Garrett, you're hurting me. He finally loosened his grip enough for me to turn. I looked up at the man I had shared my bed with for 5 years, the man I had bailed out of debt, the man I had built a life around. His eyes were cold. Dead. There was no love there. There was only calculation. He looked past me, toward the horizon, as if I were already gone. I'm sorry, Mallory, he said, but his eyes didn't look sorry. They looked impatient. But Sabrina, she needs this spot more than you do. She's waited long enough. The world seemed to stop. The sound of the waves vanished. All I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. Sabrina. My stepsister. The woman I had supported, funded, and forgiven time and time again. The perfume on his jacket wasn't an accident. It was a mark of ownership. What are you talking about? I choked out, stepping back. My heel caught on a loose rock. Pebbles skittered over the edge, falling into the abyss. Goodbye, Mallory, he whispered. Then, he shoved me. It wasn't a stumble. It wasn't an accident. It was a violent, deliberate, two-handed push centered squarely on my chest. The force of it knocked the air from my lungs. My arms flailed, grabbing at empty air, grabbing at his jacket, but he stepped back, smoothing his lapel as if brushing off lint. Gravity took over. The sky spun. The cliff face blurred. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I just fell, watching the silhouette of my husband getting smaller and smaller against the twilight sky. Before we go any further into this nightmare, I want to take a second to welcome you. If you are listening to this, you are part of my journey now. I love reading your comments, so please, take a moment to pause and let me know which city or state you are watching from today. Seeing your support from all over the world keeps me going. Now, let me tell you what happens when the man you love tries to murder you. The fall felt like it lasted an eternity, but it must have only been seconds. I remember thinking about the inheritance my father had left me. I remember thinking about how Garrett had been asking about the life insurance clauses just last week. I had been so stupid. So blind. I braced for impact, expecting the shattering of bones on the jagged rocks below. I expected darkness. I expected the end. But fate, it seems, had a different plan for me. The storm that had been brewing off the coast all day had churned the ocean into a frenzy, raising the tide higher than usual. And unbeknownst to Garrett, and unbeknownst to me, illegal fishing trawlers often use this secluded cove to dump their damaged equipment. I didn't hit the rocks. I hit something yielding but rough. A massive, tangled commercial fishing net that had snagged on the lower outcroppings of the cliff face, suspended just feet above the crashing waves. The impact was brutal. I felt a rib snap with a sickening crack. My leg twisted at an angle that forced a guttural scream from my throat, a sound that was immediately swallowed by the ocean's roar. The net groaned under my weight, the old fibers snapping one by one. I tumbled through the mesh, slowing my fall just enough so that when I finally hit the freezing black water, I wasn't paced. I was broken, yes. But I was alive. The water was like 1,000 knives stabbing my skin. The cold paralyzed me instantly. I sank, the weight of my clothes pulling me down into the dark. I wanted to close my eyes. It would be so easy to just let go. To let the water fill my lungs and wash away the betrayal. Garrett wanted me dead. Sabrina wanted me dead. Why fight it? But then, a face flashed in my mind. Not Garrett's. Sabrina's. I saw her smirk. I saw her trying on my jewelry. I saw her walking into my house, sleeping in my bed, spending my money. Rage is a powerful fuel. It burns hotter than love and lasts longer than grief. I kicked my good leg, clawing my way toward the surface. I broke through the water, gasping for air, choking on salt and bile. The current was strong, smashing me against the rocks, scraping the skin off my arms. I grabbed onto a piece of driftwood, clinging to it with everything I had left. I will not die, I hissed through chattering teeth. I will not let them win. The current dragged me around the point, away from the cliff where Garrett was likely peering over, looking for my body. I drifted in and out of consciousness, the pain in my ribs pulsing with every beat of my heart. I don't know how long I was in the water. Minutes? Hours? Eventually, the driftwood hit sand. I felt the rough texture of a beach beneath my knees. I tried to crawl, but my body refused to obey. I collapsed onto the wet sand, the darkness finally closing in around the edges of my vision. The last thing I saw was a pair of worn, muddy boots walking toward me, and the beam of a flashlight cutting through the gloom. Then, everything went black. Pain has a sound. It's a high-pitched ringing in your ears that drowns out everything else. When I opened my eyes, that ringing was the first thing I noticed. The second was the smell. Not the ocean, not Chanel No. 5, but wood smoke and dried herbs. Sage, maybe? Or rosemary. I tried to sit up, but a sharp agony shot through my chest, forcing a gasp from my dry throat. Easy now. Unless you want to puncture a lung, a voice rumbled from the corner of the room. I froze, my eyes darting around. I was lying on a cot in a small, dimly lit cabin. The walls were lined with shelves full of glass jars, old books, and what looked like medical supplies from a different era. Sitting in a rocking chair by a wood-burning stove was a man who looked like he had been carved out of the cliffside itself. He had a thick gray beard, skin weathered like old leather, and eyes that were sharp and intelligent. Who are you?" I croaked. My voice sounded like I had swallowed broken glass. "Name's Silas," he said, standing up. He walked with a slight limp, but his movements were efficient. He brought a tin cup of water to my lips. "Drink." Small sips. I drank greedily, the water soothing my parched throat. "Where am I?" "You're about 2 miles south of the drop point," Silas said, looking at me intently. "Found you washed up on the shingle like a piece of driftwood. You're lucky the tide was coming in, or you'd be halfway to Hawaii by now." He pulled a stool over and sat next to the cot. "You've got 3 broken ribs, a hairline fracture in your left tibia, and enough bruising to make you look like a Concord grape." I set the leg and wrapped the ribs while you were out. You've been sleeping for 2 days. 2 days. The reality of it hit me like a physical blow. For 2 days, Garrett had been playing the grieving husband. For 2 days, he had been free. I need a phone, I said, trying to push myself up again, ignoring the screaming pain in my side. I need to call the police. My husband, he tried to kill me. Silas didn't look surprised. He didn't gasp or reach for a phone. He just nodded slowly, as if this was a story he had heard 1,000 times before. I figured as much, he said calmly. People don't usually fall off those cliffs fully dressed for dinner unless they were pushed. But you're not calling anyone right now. Why not? I demanded, panic rising in my chest. Was he working with Garrett? Was this another trap? Because if you call the police now, you're just a hysterical woman with a broken leg and a story that's hard to prove, Silas said, his voice hard but not unkind. And because I don't have a phone. I live off the grid. No landline, no cell service in this canyon. I slumped back onto the pillow, tears of frustration stinging my eyes. He thinks I'm dead. That, Silas said, pointing a calloused finger at me, is your biggest advantage. A dead enemy is a careless enemy. He stood up and walked over to a small table, picking up a crumpled piece of newspaper. It smelled of fish guts and old coffee. He smoothed it out and handed it to me. Went into town this morning for supplies, he said. Found this wrapped around my bait. I took the paper, my hands trembling. It was the local Gazette. And there, on page 4, was my face. It was a photo from my wedding day, 5 years ago. I looked so happy, so full of hope. The headline read, "Local architect presumed dead after tragic hiking accident." I read the article, my stomach churning. Garrett had spun a masterpiece of a lie. He claimed we were hiking to watch the sunset, that I had ventured too close to the edge to take a selfie, and that the ground had given way. He was devastated. He was inconsolable. The search has been called off due to dangerous currents, the article concluded. A memorial service is being planned by her husband, Garrett Thompson, and her sister, Sabrina Vance. Her sister. Not stepsister. Sister. She was already rewriting history. They're planning my funeral, I whispered, the paper crinkling in my clenched fist. They aren't even looking for me. They just want me gone. Looks like it, Silas said, tossing a log into the fire. Sparks flew up the chimney. Question is, what are you going to do about it? You can hike out of here in a week when that leg heals up, go to the cops, and fight him in court. It'll be your word against his. Or. He let the sentence hang in the air. Or what? I asked, looking at him. Or you stay dead for a little while longer, Silas said, his eyes glinting in the firelight. You heal. You get strong. And you watch them. If they think you're gone, they'll make mistakes. Greedy people always do. I looked at the newspaper again. I looked at Garrett's face, pretending to cry for the cameras. I thought about the custody of my life, my assets, my dignity that he had stolen. If I went back now, he would lawyer up. He would use my money, my father's money, to destroy my reputation. He would paint me as unstable, clumsy, suicidal even. But if I was a ghost, ghosts can go places the living can't. Ghosts can see things. Ghosts can haunt. I can't pay you, I said softly. My wallet is at the bottom of the ocean. Silas shrugged. I don't need money. I need someone to help me fix the roof on the shed once you can stand. And I hate eating alone. You cook? I'm a terrible cook, I admitted. We'll work on it, he grunted. Rest now. You've got a funeral to attend in spirit. I lay back, clutching the newspaper to my chest. The physical pain was still there, throbbing in time with my pulse, but a new sensation was taking root alongside it. A cold, hard resolve. Garrett wanted to write the end of my story. He wanted to close the book on Mallory Thompson. But he forgot one thing. I was an architect. I knew how to build things. And I knew how to dismantle them, brick by brick. I wasn't going to just survive. I was going to bring the whole house down on top of them. The next few days in the cabin were a blur of agony and introspection. Silas was a man of few words, but his actions spoke volumes. He was a former military medic, which explained his efficiency with my injuries. He didn't coddle me. He made me move, made me breathe through the pain, made me drink foul-tasting herbal teas that he swore would speed up the bone knitting. Trapped in that small wooden room, with nothing but the sound of the wind and the crackle of the fire, I had too much time to think. To remember. My mind kept drifting back to the beginning, trying to find the red flags I had missed. I met Garrett 10 years ago. I was 28, fresh out of grad school, and working myself to the bone at my father's firm. My father had passed away the year before, leaving me with a massive hole in my heart and a complicated inheritance. I wasn't the sparkling, charismatic type. I was the worker bee. The one behind the scenes. In my own family, I was invisible. My stepmother, Brenda, and her daughter, Sabrina, were the stars. They were loud, colorful, and demanding. I was just the bank account. Garrett was different. Or so I thought. He was a junior developer my firm was consulting for. He was charming, attentive, and seemingly awestruck by my talent, not my checkbook. I remember the first time he defended me. It was at a family barbecue. Brenda was berating me for not lending Sabrina money for a new car, her third one that year. Mallory works hard for her salary, Garrett had cut in, stepping between me and Brenda. She doesn't owe anyone anything. You should respect her more. No one had ever stood up to Brenda for me. Not even my father, peace be upon him, who hated conflict. In that moment, looking at Garrett's broad shoulders and determined jaw, I felt seen. I felt protected. I fell in love with the defender, never realizing he was just securing his investment. Silas interrupted my brooding by dropping a bag of beans on the table. Snap these. Gives your hands something to do besides shaking. I sat up, wincing as my ribs protested. I'm not shaking. You're vibrating with rage, Silas corrected. It's exhausting to watch. Snap the beans. I picked up a bean and snapped it aggressively. He played the long game, Silas. 10 years. Who pretends for 10 years? A man who wants a kingdom but doesn't want to build it himself, Silas said, taking a knife to a potato. Did he know about the money right away? He knew I was comfortable, I said. But he didn't know the extent of the trust fund until we were married. My father was paranoid about fortune hunters. He locked the main capital away in a trust that I could only access fully when I turned 40, or... I stopped. The bean in my hand snapped into 3 pieces. Or what? Silas asked, not looking up. Or if I died, I whispered. If I die, the trust dissolves and passes to my next of kin. My husband. And if you divorce? If we divorce, he gets nothing. My father's lawyer, Donovan, made sure the prenup was ironclad. The only way Garrett gets his hands on the millions is if he stays married to me, or if he becomes my widower. It all made sense now. The timing. I was 38. 2 years away from full control. Garrett's business ventures had been failing lately, I knew that much, though he tried to hide it. He was desperate. He couldn't wait 2 years, and he certainly couldn't afford a divorce. Murder was his only financial strategy. Smart man, your father, Silas muttered. But he underestimated how greedy a desperate man can get. I need to call Donovan, I said, a sudden urgency gripping me. He's the executor. If he releases the funds to Garrett. He can't release anything without a death certificate, Silas said. And without a body, that takes time. Years, usually. Unless there's overwhelming evidence of an accident, I finished. Like a witness. Sabrina. Exactly. They'll push to have you declared dead in absentia. But that legal process still takes months. You have time. I don't have months, I said, looking at the crude calendar on the wall. Garrett is drowning in debt. I saw the notices he tried to hide. If he doesn't get money soon, he'll do something drastic. He'll liquidate what he can. He'll sell my house. He'll sell my mother's jewelry. Then you better heal up fast, Silas said. Eat. That night, lying in the dark, I cried for the last time. I mourned the death of the girl who believed in fairy tales. I mourned the loss of the husband I thought I had. I let the grief wash over me, heavy and suffocating. And then, I let it go. When I woke up the next morning, the pain was still there, but the shaking had stopped. I looked at the mirror Silas had hung on the wall. My face was bruised, yellow and purple. There was a jagged cut on my cheek that would surely leave a scar. My hair was matted with salt and blood. I didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. She looked terrifying. Good, I thought. Mallory the architect built structures. Mallory the survivor was going to build a trap. Silas, I called out. He was outside chopping wood. He stuck his head in the door. Yeah? I need to dye my hair, I said. And I need you to tell me everything you know about tracking people. Silas leaned against the doorframe, a slow grin spreading across his face. Well now. Looks like the ghost is finally ready to haunt. Recovery is a slow, humiliating process. Learning to walk again on a fractured tibia involved a lot of swearing and falling, but Silas was a relentless taskmaster. He whittled me a cane from driftwood and forced me to hike up and down the rocky path behind the cabin until my lungs burned and my leg throbbed. Pain is information, he would say when I wanted to quit. It tells you you're alive. Use it. 3 weeks after the fall, I was mobile. I wasn't fast, and I had a limp that might never go away, but I could move. It was time to reach out to the one person in the world who might believe me. Silas drove me into town in his battered old truck. We parked behind a derelict gas station to avoid cameras. He handed me a burner phone he'd bought with cash. Keep it short, he warned. Don't tell him where you are. Just tell him what he needs to know. My hands shook as I dialed Donovan's private number. Donovan had been my father's best friend and lawyer for 30 years. He was the grandfather I never had. Donovan Price speaking, his voice was gravelly, tired. He sounded like a man who had been attending funerals. Donovan, I said, my voice cracking. It's Mallory. There was a silence on the other end so profound I thought the call had dropped. Then, a ragged gasp. Mallory? Is this a sick joke? Who is this? It's not a joke, Uncle Don, I said, using the nickname I hadn't used since I was a child. Ask me about the blue rabbit. It was a test. When I was 5, I had buried a blue toy rabbit in his garden. Only he and I knew about it. Oh my God, he breathed, the professional veneer shattering. Mallory. My God. They said you fell. Garrett said. Garrett pushed me, I cut in, my voice icy. He pushed me, Donovan. He tried to kill me for the trust fund. I knew it, Donovan hissed. The sorrow in his voice was instantly replaced by the sharp, predatory tone of a high-powered attorney. I never liked that son of a bitch. I knew something was wrong when he showed up at my office the day after the accident asking about the expedited payout. He did what? Even expecting it, hearing it confirmed made my blood boil. He tried to file a claim. He brought Sabrina with him, Donovan said, disgust dripping from every word. They're trying to push through a presaged death certificate based on witness testimony and the dangerous conditions of the body retrieval. They want access to the liquid assets immediately. They're claiming financial hardship due to your loss of salary. Don't give them a cent, I said. I can't hold them off forever, Mal. The law is tricky. But now that I know you're alive. No, I interrupted. You can't let them know I'm alive. Not yet. Mallory, you need to come in. We need to go to the police. If we go to the police now, it's my word against his. He'll claim I'm crazy, that I jumped and regretted it, that the fall caused brain damage. He has the narrative. He has the public sympathy. I need undeniable proof. I need to catch him in the act of fraud, or worse. I took a deep breath. Tell me about the clause. The one Dad put in about unnatural death. Donovan paused. The Black Widow clause. Your father added it after his second divorce. If the beneficiary dies under suspicious circumstances, or if there is an open investigation, the funds are frozen indefinitely. Furthermore, if the beneficiary dies and the spouse is deemed complicit, or if the marriage was dissolved prior to death, the money bypasses the spouse entirely and goes to charity. Does Garrett know about this? No. He only knows about the age requirement. He thinks if you die, he gets it all. Good, I said. Keep stalling him, Donovan. Tell him there's red tape. Tell him the insurance company is investigating. Make him sweat. Make him desperate. But do not tell him I'm alive. Mallory, this is dangerous. He threw me off a cliff, Donovan. We passed dangerous a long time ago. I need a safe house. Somewhere close to the city but off the books. And I need cash. Can you help me? Always, Donovan said without hesitation. I have a rental property in the industrial district. It's under an LLC. I'll leave keys and cash in the usual spot, the lockbox at the train station. Code is your birthday. Thank you. Mallory? Yeah. Give him hell. I hung up and destroyed the SIM card. When I looked up, Silas was watching me with a look of approval. You've got a good lawyer, he noted. I have a war to win, I replied. We drove back to the cabin in silence. The plan was forming. Garrett needed money. If Donovan stalled the inheritance, Garrett would have to look for other sources. He would get sloppy. And I would be there, hiding in the shadows, waiting to push him over his own metaphorical cliff. I touched the scar on my cheek. It was time for a makeover. Mallory, the victim, was dead. It was time for the ghost to rise. The day I left Silas's cabin, the fog was thick, hugging the coastline like a shroud. It felt appropriate. I was stepping out of the sanctuary and back into the war zone. You take care of yourself, girl, Silas said, handing me a small pocket knife. This isn't for peeling apples. If he gets close again, use it. I hope I won't have to, I said, hugging the old man who had saved my life. Thank you, Silas. For everything. Just make sure you win, he grunted, looking away to hide the emotion in his eyes. I took the bus into the city, keeping my head down, wearing an oversized hoodie. My leg ached with every step, a constant reminder of my mission. I retrieved the package from the train station lockbox. Donovan had come through, a stack of cash, keys to an apartment, and a new smartphone. The apartment was in a gritty part of town, overlooking a noisy highway. It was perfect. Anonymous. I spent the first 2 days turning it into a command center. I bought burner laptops, high-range binoculars, and listening devices. But first, I had to deal with the face in the mirror. I couldn't walk around looking like Mallory Thompson. Not yet. I stood in the harsh fluorescent light of the bathroom, staring at my reflection. My dark brown hair, the hair Garrett used to run his fingers through, had to go. I bought a box of cheap bleach and dye. I sat on the bathroom floor, the chemical smell stinging my nose, and smeared the paste onto my head. It burned, but the physical pain was grounding. When I washed it out and dried it, I gasped. I was blonde. Platinum blonde. It was shocking. But more than that, it was symbolic. Blonde was Sabrina's color. She prided herself on her natural golden locks, which cost her $400 a month to maintain. By becoming blonde, I was becoming the thing Garrett desired. I was hiding in plain sight. I cut it short, into a sharp, jagged bob that framed my jawline. I applied heavy makeup to cover the bruising, but I left the scar on my cheek visible, accentuating it with liner to make it look like a tough, old injury rather than a fresh wound. With the sunglasses and the thrift store leather jacket, I didn't look like a high-end architect anymore. I looked like someone you wouldn't want to mess with in a dark alley. Step 1 was complete. Step 2 was reconnaissance. I knew Garrett's routine. I knew he parked his Tesla in the VIP lot near his office. I knew the code to his car because he used his birthday for everything, a testament to his narcissism. I rented a cheap, nondescript sedan and drove to the financial district. I parked across the street from his office building and waited. At 12:30 p.m., the glass doors opened. My breath hitched in my throat. There he was. Garrett. He looked fine. Better than fine. He was wearing a new suit, Italian cut. He was laughing at something on his phone. There was no grief in his posture. No weight on his shoulders. And then, she walked out. Sabrina. She was wearing my trench coat. The Burberry one I had bought in London 3 years ago. She had her arm linked through his, possessing him, claiming him. She looked radiant, practically glowing with victory. I watched them through the binoculars, my hands gripping the wheel so hard the leather creaked. They stopped at the curb. Garrett leaned down and kissed her. Not a peck on the cheek. A deep, lingering kiss. Right there in public. Less than a month after my death. You monsters, I whispered, tears of rage pricking my eyes. You didn't even wait for the body to cool. They got into his car and drove off. I followed them, keeping a safe distance. They didn't go to the cemetery. They didn't go to a lawyer's office. They went to a luxury car dealership. I watched from the lot across the street as they walked around a gleaming red Porsche. Sabrina was pointing, giggling, twirling around. Garrett was nodding, pulling out his wallet. He was spending money he didn't have yet. He was banking on the insurance payout. He was leveraging my death to buy my killer a toy. I took out my phone and snapped photos. Dozens of them. This was gold. Grieving husband and sister-in-law buying sports cars while the wife is missing. It would play well in court. It would play even better in the court of public opinion. But I wasn't ready to release them yet. I needed to know more. I needed to know how deep the rot went. That night, under the cover of darkness, I drove to the house. My house. The mid-century modern masterpiece I had designed myself. It sat on a hill, isolated and beautiful. I parked a mile away and hiked through the woods, my leg protesting every uneven step. I knew the security blind spots because I had drawn the blueprints. I crept up to the back of the garage. My heart pounded as I tapped into the external junction box. I connected my laptop to the smart home system. Garrett had never bothered to change the master admin passwords, he always said technology was my thing. Big mistake, Garrett, I muttered. I watched the progress bar load. 98%. 99%. 100%. Access granted. I was in. I had control of the cameras, the microphones, the lights, the thermostat, the locks. I put my headphones on and clicked on the live feed from the living room. Garrett and Sabrina were there, drinking my vintage wine. "Relax, baby," Garrett was saying. "Donovan is just being a prick. The money will come. The law is on our side." "I hate waiting," Sabrina whined, kicking her feet up on the white suede sofa, feet clad in muddy boots. "And I hate this house. It feels like her." "We'll sell it as soon as the deed transfers," Garrett promised. "We'll buy a penthouse in the city. Just us. No ghost of Mallory to haunt us." I smiled in the darkness. "Oh, you have no idea," I whispered. Over the next week, I became a digital voyeur in my own home. I sat in my dingy apartment, eating takeout noodles, watching Garrett and Sabrina live the life I had built. It was a form of torture, but it was also an education. I learned that Sabrina's hatred for me wasn't just simple jealousy, it was pathological. One evening, watching the kitchen feed, I saw Brenda, my stepmother, come over for dinner. They were eating steaks, probably bought with my credit card, which I realized they hadn't cancelled yet. "This is the life you deserve, sweetie," Brenda cooed, pouring more wine for Sabrina. "I always said you were meant for better things than your sister. Mallory was always so dreary. So serious." "She was a bore, Mom," Sabrina laughed, her mouth full. "Always studying, always working. Look at me, I'm an architect, I'm so smart." "She never knew how to live." "She was selfish, too," Brenda added. "Remember when she refused to give up her college fund to help you with modeling school? Said she earned it because she had scholarships. As if family doesn't come first." My jaw dropped. The audacity. My college fund was money my mother, my biological mother, had saved for me before she died. Brenda had tried to drain it to pay for Sabrina's modeling career, which consisted of 2 photoshoots and a scam agency fee. My father had put his foot down for once, blocking Brenda's access. Apparently, she had held that grudge for 20 years. "Well, she's paying for it now," Garrett said, raising his glass. "To Mallory. The best investor I ever had." They all clinked glasses. I felt bile rise in my throat. They didn't just kill me, they despised me. They felt entitled to my murder. But the surveillance also revealed the cracks in their armor. Garrett was taking calls in the study late at night, whispering so Sabrina wouldn't hear. "I need more time," I heard him plead one Tuesday. "The insurance is delayed. Look, I can get you 10 grand by Friday." "No, don't come to the house. Please." He hung up, looking pale. He opened his laptop, and I zoomed in on the screen via the ceiling camera. He was looking at a crypto exchange. His portfolio was a sea of red. He had lost nearly everything. He wasn't just broke, he was underwater. "So that's it," I mused, taking notes. "You borrowed money from the wrong people, didn't you, Garrett?" Meanwhile, Sabrina was becoming increasingly paranoid. She complained about noises. She said the house felt cold. "It's just the wind, Sab," Garrett would snap, clearly stressed by his secret financial ruin. "It's not the wind." "I smell her," Sabrina shrieked one night. I swear I smelled her perfume in the hallway. I smirked. I hadn't even started messing with them yet, and her guilty conscience was already doing half the work. But I decided to give her conscience a little nudge. I knew the house had a sophisticated HVAC system with scent diffusers, a feature I installed to make the house smell like white tea in time. I remotely accessed the system controls. I couldn't change the scent cartridge from afar, but I could mess with the airflow. I waited until 2 a.m., when the house was silent. I cranked the AC in the master bedroom down to 60 degrees. On the night vision camera, I saw Sabrina shiver and pull the duvet up. Garrett groaned in his sleep. Then, I accessed the multi-room audio system. I didn't play anything loud. I didn't want to wake them fully. I selected a track of white noise but overlaid it with a very faint, low-frequency sound, a sound barely audible to the human ear but known to cause feelings of unease and anxiety. I played it only in the bedroom. Sabrina tossed and turned. She sat up, looking around into the darkness. "Garrett," she hissed. "Garrett, wake up." "What?" he grumbled. "It's freezing. And I feel like someone is watching us." "Go to sleep, Sabrina." "You're crazy." "I'm not crazy." She got up and turned on the lights. "I'm telling you, this house is cursed." This was good. But I needed to get physically closer. I needed to plant evidence that would make them turn on each other. I waited for a day when I knew they would both be out. Garrett had a meeting with his creditors, loan sharks, and Sabrina had a spa day. I drove to the house. I parked in the woods and limped to the back door. I punched in the code. It beeped green. Entering the house was surreal. It was exactly as I had left it, yet it felt violated. My photos were gone, replaced by art prints. My clothes were missing from the closet. Sabrina had likely thrown them out or sold them. I went to the master bathroom. I opened the medicine cabinet. Garrett's anxiety meds were there. I took a few pills out of the bottle, just enough so he would wonder if he'd taken more than he thought. Then, I went to the guest room where Sabrina kept her hoard of shopping bags. I found a bottle of her Chanel No. 5. I took it to the garage. I sprayed the driver's seat of Garrett's Tesla liberally with it. Then, I took a lipstick, a shade I used to wear, a deep crimson, and left a faint smudge on the collar of one of Garrett's white shirts hanging in the laundry room. It was a classic move. Simple. Cliché, even. But for a woman like Sabrina, whose entire relationship with Garrett was built on infidelity, it would be nuclear. She would smell her own perfume on him and think nothing of it. But the lipstick? That wasn't hers. And if she thought Garrett was cheating on her, well, a thief always fears being robbed. I left the house, leaving the back door slightly ajar, just enough to trigger the door open notification on Garrett's phone later, making him think he was forgetful. The seeds were planted. Now, I just had to wait for the weeds to grow. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. The next morning, I watched the kitchen feed with a cup of coffee in hand. Garrett was trying to drink his espresso, but his hand was shaking. The door open alert had kept him up half the night searching the house with a baseball bat. He looked haggard. Sabrina stormed into the kitchen, holding the white shirt. "Who is she?" she screamed, throwing the shirt at him. Garrett flinched, spilling coffee on the counter. "What the hell are you talking about?" "The lipstick, Garrett." "Who is she? Are you seeing someone else? Is that where you go when you say you're meeting investors?" "I'm not seeing anyone," Garrett yelled back, standing up. "I'm trying to keep us from losing everything. This. I don't know where that came from. Maybe it's old. Maybe it's Mallory's. Mallory didn't wear this shade." Sabrina shrieked. She wore boring nude colors. "This is slut red." "Who is she?" "You're calling someone a slut?" Garrett laughed, a cruel, mocking sound. "That's rich coming from the woman who was sleeping with her sister's husband." Sabrina slapped him. It was a sharp, cracking sound that echoed through the kitchen. "Don't you dare speak to me like that," she hissed. "I'm the only reason you're even close to getting that money. If I tell the police what really happened at the cliff." Garrett grabbed her wrist. His face transformed, the mask slipping completely. He looked dangerous. "You won't say a word," he growled low. "Because if I go down, Sabrina, you go down with me." You helped plan it. You scouted the location. You bought the tickets. You're an accomplice to murder. So sit down and shut up. I hit the record button on my laptop. Gotcha. It wasn't a full confession of the act itself, but it was admission of conspiracy. It was leverage. But I needed more. I needed them to admit the physical act of the push. I decided to ramp up the psychological warfare. Garrett had a severe allergy to lilies. Not deadly, but enough to make his eyes swell and his throat itch uncontrollably. It was the one detail I had always managed carefully in our home, ensuring no floral arrangements ever contained them. I placed an order with a local florist for a massive bouquet of stargazer lilies, the most fragrant kind. I requested a card that said simply, "Thinking of you." No name. I had them delivered to his office, not the house. When I checked the office bug, audio only, later that afternoon, I heard him sneezing violently. "Get these, Achu, out of here," he was yelling at his assistant. "Who sent these?" "There's no name, sir. Just a card." "It's her," he muttered. I could hear the fear in his voice. "It's Sabrina. She's trying to punish me." He called Sabrina. "Did you send lilies to my office?" he demanded, his voice thick with congestion. "What?" "No. I'm at the mall." "Don't lie to me. You know I'm allergic." "You're trying to blind me?" "I didn't send them, you paranoid freak." They hung up on each other. Paranoia was setting in. They were no longer a team, they were enemies trapped in the same sinking ship. That night, I decided to play my ace. I had recorded a snippet of audio from an old home video. It was just me laughing. A soft, happy laugh from better times. I waited until 3:33 a.m. The witching hour. I hacked the smart speaker in the hallway outside their bedroom. I played the laugh. Once. Quietly. Then silence. Then I played the sound of footsteps, a recording of heels clicking on hardwood floors. Click. 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 I watched the bedroom feed. Garrett shot up in bed, eyes wide. He grabbed the gun from his nightstand. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. Sabrina was crying under the covers. "It's her. She's back. She's back." "Shut up!" Garrett yelled, jumping out of bed. He ran into the hallway, gun raised. "Who's there? Show yourself." The hallway was empty. I waited until he walked past the guest room. Then, I triggered the smart lights in that room to flicker on and off rapidly. Garrett spun around, firing a shot into the wall. Bang! The gunshot was deafening. Sabrina screamed. "Garrett! Stop it!" He stood there, panting, chest heaving, staring at the empty guest room. "I know you're here," he screamed into the empty house. "You're dead. I watched you fall. I watched you die." Bingo. I didn't have that on video, he was in the hallway, out of the camera's view, but the audio picked it up clearly. "I watched you fall. I watched you die." It contradicted his statement to the police that he had looked away or tried to grab me. It proved he watched. It proved intent. But it still wasn't enough to convict him of murder beyond a reasonable doubt without a body. A good defense lawyer could argue it was PTSD, hallucination, or metaphor. I needed to catch him signing the papers. I needed to catch him committing the fraud that was the motive for the murder. And thanks to Donovan, the trap was set for the wedding. The week leading up to the wedding was a spectacle of disintegration. Garrett looked like a walking corpse. He had dark circles under his eyes, he was losing weight, and he flinched at loud noises. Sabrina wasn't doing much better, she had started drinking heavily during the day. But the wedding planning continued. It had to. It was their lifeline. Donovan called me on the burner phone. He's pushing for the custody of the estate assets again, Donovan said. He came to my office with a forged document. A letter he claims he found in your desk, written by you, stating that in the event of your disappearance, he should have immediate power of attorney. He forged my handwriting? I asked, impressed by his stupidity. It's a decent forgery, but he used a pen that wasn't manufactured until last year on paper dated 3 years ago. Amateur hour. But here's the kicker, he's using this to try and secure a bridge loan from a private lender. A shark. He's borrowing against the inheritance he hasn't received yet? Exactly. And the lender requires proof of marriage to the new beneficiary, Sabrina, since she's the secondary heir if you're dead and he's incapacitated. It's a mess, Mallory. But the bottom line is, if he doesn't get married on Saturday, the loan falls through. And if the loan falls through, the people he owes money to are going to break his legs. So the wedding is non-negotiable for him, I said. It's life or death. He has to marry Sabrina to consolidate their claim and satisfy the lenders. Perfect, I said. Then let's give him a wedding he'll never forget. I spent the next 2 days gathering every scrap of evidence. The audio recordings of their fights. The video of the confession in the hallway. The photos of the car dealership. The screenshots of his crypto losses. The logs of him hacking into my bank accounts, which I had let him do, tracing the IP address right back to his phone. I compiled it all into a presentation. A digital slideshow of damnation. I called the hotel where the wedding was being held. Posing as the wedding planner's assistant, I spoke to the AV tech. Mr. Thompson wants a surprise video montage for the bride, I said, my voice bubbly and professional. He sent over the file. Can I email it to you? It needs to play right after the vows, before the kiss. Big surprise. Sure thing, the tech said. Send it over. I sent the file. It was password protected. I told him I'd text him the password on the day of, for security. Everything was in place. But there was one last loose end. Brenda. My stepmother had been surprisingly quiet. I tuned into the house cameras one last time. Brenda was in the living room with Sabrina. Are you sure about this, honey? Brenda asked, adjusting Sabrina's veil. Garrett seems unstable. I don't care if he's crazy, Mom. Sabrina snapped. He's going to be worth $5 million as soon as the death certificate clears. Once we're married, half of that is mine. If he loses it, I'll divorce him and take my cut. I just need the ring on my finger. That's my girl, Brenda smiled. Smart. Unlike Mallory. She never understood that love is a business transaction. I turned off the laptop. My hand was shaking, not from fear, but from pure, cold anger. They were vultures. Picking at my bones before I was even in the ground. Love is a business transaction, I repeated to the empty apartment. Fine. Then let's close the deal. I looked at the white suit hanging on the door. It was sharp, tailored, and powerful. It was the armor of a woman who built skyscrapers. Tomorrow, I wouldn't be hiding in the shadows. Tomorrow, I wouldn't be the ghost in the hallway or the voice on the speaker. Tomorrow, I would be the storm. I checked my phone. One new message from Donovan. Police are on standby. They will wait for your signal. Good luck, kid. I lay down on the cheap mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling. I thought about the cliff. I thought about the push. I thought about the way Garrett had looked at me with dead eyes. He thought he had destroyed me. He thought he had erased Mallory Thompson from the earth. He was about to learn that you can't kill a foundation. You can strip away the walls, you can break the windows, you can burn the roof, but the foundation remains. And on that foundation, I was going to build his prison. The sun set over the city, casting long shadows across the floor. It was the last night I would spend in hiding. I closed my eyes and whispered into the dark. See you at the altar, darling. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, they say. But in this case, the enemy of my enemy was her own ego. Sabrina had always been insecure. It was the root of her cruelty. She needed to be the prettiest, the richest, the most adored. Garrett knew this, and he had played her like a fiddle for years. But now, the fiddle was out of tune, and the music was about to get very ugly. 2 days before the wedding, I decided to pull the pin on the grenade I had been holding. Through my surveillance of Garrett's emails, which he foolishly left logged in on the home network, I found a correspondence with a woman named Mrs. van der Hoven. She was a wealthy widow in her 60s, a real estate mogul looking for young talent to manage her portfolio. Garrett had been courting her for weeks, sending flirty emails, scheduling private consultations. I knew exactly what he was doing. He was lining up a plan B. If the insurance money from my death was delayed, or if the trust fund remained frozen, he needed a new sugar mama. I took screenshots of the emails. I also found a receipt for a diamond bracelet, not for Sabrina, but sent to Mrs. van der Hoven's address. I printed them out. I put them in a pristine white envelope. And I had a courier deliver them directly to Sabrina at the bridal salon where she was having her final fitting for my mother's vintage pearl necklace, which she had stolen from my safe. I watched the fallout on the salon's security camera, which, luckily for me, was a basic system with a default password I guessed in 3 tries. Sabrina was standing on the pedestal, looking at herself in the mirror, wearing a dress that cost more than my first car. The courier handed her the envelope. She opened it. Her smile dropped. Her face went blotchy red. She didn't cry. She screamed. A primal, animalistic sound. She ripped the dress off, tearing the delicate lace, and stormed out of the salon in her underwear and a robe, clutching the envelope like a weapon. She drove straight to Garrett's office. I switched to the audio bug in his office. You dirtbag! Sabrina shrieked as she barged in. Who is Mrs. van der Hoven? Sabrina, calm down, my staff is listening. I don't care. You bought her a bracelet? With what money? You told me we were broke. You told me we had to wait for Mallory's life insurance. It's business, Sabrina. She's an investor. She's 65 and you're sending her emails about her beautiful eyes? Is that business? Or are you just looking for your next Mallory? Silence. A heavy, dangerous silence. Then Garrett's voice, cold and venomous. Watch your mouth. You think you're special, Sabrina? You're a high school dropout with a shopping addiction. I needed you to get close to Mallory. I needed you to verify the will. But don't think for a second you're irreplaceable. If you blow this wedding, if you blow my chance at that trust fund, I will leave you on the street with nothing but the clothes on your back. And considering you stole those clothes from your dead sister, that's not saying much. You used me, Sabrina whimpered. We used each other, Garrett corrected. Now go home. Put on the dress. And smile. Because if I go down for fraud, or worse, you're coming with me as an accessory to murder. Do you understand? I heard the door slam. I sat back in my chair, sipping my lukewarm coffee. They were fracturing. The trust was gone. Sabrina now knew she was just a pawn. Garrett knew Sabrina was a liability. But the most important thing I learned from that exchange wasn't about their relationship. It was about Garrett's desperation. He admitted, out loud, that he needed the wedding to get the trust fund. He admitted he was grooming a backup victim. He was a predator. And predators don't stop hunting until you put them in a cage. I looked at the calendar. 1 day left. That night, I went to the safe house's small balcony. The city lights twinkled below, indifferent to my drama. I felt a strange sense of calm. The anger was still there, a pilot light burning blue and hot, but the panic was gone. I wasn't afraid of them anymore. I had seen them for what they were, small, scared, greedy children playing dress-up in adult lives. My phone buzzed. It was Donovan. Judge signed the warrant. We're good to go. Do you have the suit? I smiled. I have the suit. Do you have the handcuffs? Shiny and new, he replied. I went back inside and looked at the whiteboard where I had mapped out their destruction. I drew a big red X over the words Garrett and Sabrina's alliance. Step 1, isolation. Complete. Step 2, paranoia. Complete. Step 3, financial ruin. In progress. Step 4, public execution. That was tomorrow. I slept soundly that night. The kind of deep, dreamless sleep you get before a big exam or a long journey. I wasn't Mallory the victim. I wasn't Mallory the ghost. I was the hammer, suspended in the air, waiting to fall. The night before the wedding is supposed to be filled with anticipation and joy. For Garrett and Sabrina, it was a descent into madness. I wasn't done with them yet. I needed one final piece of evidence. I needed Garrett to confess his guilt not to Sabrina, but to me. Or at least, to the idea of me. I knew Garrett's habits. When he was stressed, he drank scotch. When he was really stressed, he talked to himself. It was a tic he had developed years ago, a way of rationalizing his bad decisions. I accessed the smart home system again. It was 1 a.m. Sabrina had gone to stay at a hotel, tradition, she claimed, but I knew she just couldn't stand to be in the haunted house with him. Garrett was alone. He was sitting in the living room, surrounded by boxes. He was packing up my things. My books, my awards, my photos. He was erasing me. I waited until he was drunk enough to be pliable but sober enough to be terrified. I accessed the TV. I didn't turn it on fully. I just cast a static image to the screen for a split second, a photo of the cliffside at Big Sur. Garrett blinked, shaking his head. Get a grip, Thompson, he muttered. Then, I used the audio system again. But this time, I didn't use a recording. I used a voice modulation software I had installed on my laptop. It pitched my voice slightly lower, adding a ghostly echo. Garrett. I whispered into the microphone. He froze. The glass of scotch halfway to his mouth. Who's there? Why, Garrett? He stood up, spinning around, the glass crashing to the floor. Show yourself. I know you're in here. Is this a joke? Sabrina, is this you? You didn't look back, I said, my voice filling the room from every speaker, surrounding him. You pushed me, and you didn't even look back. I had to, he screamed, addressing the empty air. He was breaking. The stress of the debt, the police investigation, the haunting, it was all culminating in this moment. I had to do it. You wouldn't release the money. You are going to let me go bankrupt. So you killed me for money? I did it for us. For my legacy. He was pacing now, pulling at his hair. You were always so superior. My father's money, my father's trust. I hated it. I hated needing you. And now? Now I'm free, he yelled, his face contorted in a mask of ugly triumph. You're dead, Mallory. You're crab food. And tomorrow, I marry Sabrina, I get the payout, and I erase you forever. You hear me? You're nothing. I hit stop on the recording software. That was it. The confession. Clear, specific, and full of motive. You're dead. I hated needing you. I did it for the money. Garrett collapsed onto the sofa, sobbing into his hands. Not tears of remorse, but tears of adrenaline and self-pity. He thought he was yelling at a hallucination. He thought he was wrestling with his own demons. He had no idea he was giving a deposition. I saved the file. I backed it up to 3 different cloud servers and emailed a copy to Donovan. Got it, I texted. It's chilling, Donovan replied instantly. The police have heard it. The district attorney is on board. They wanted to arrest him tonight, but I told them to wait. We stick to the plan. We stick to the plan, I agreed. If they arrested him tonight, it would be a quiet affair. A knock on the door, a ride in a squad car. The media might miss it. Sabrina might spin a story that she was a victim too. No. I needed the theater. I needed the spectacle. I needed everyone who mattered, the investors, the society friends, the family members who had turned a blind eye to Brenda's abuse, to see exactly who Garrett Thompson was. I closed my laptop. My hands were steady. I went to the closet and pulled out the white suit. I ran my fingers over the fabric. It was Italian silk, structured and sharp. I had designed it myself for the Pritzker Prize ceremony I hoped to attend one day. It wasn't a wedding dress. It was a power suit. I laid out my accessories. The heels, 4 inches, lethal. The earrings, simple diamonds. And the perfume. Not my usual white tea scent. I picked up the small bottle I had bought online. Chanel No. 5. I was going to wear Sabrina's scent. I was going to smell like his betrayal. When I walked past him, I wanted that scent to hit him like a physical blow, triggering the memory of the cliff, the guilt, and the woman he conspired with. It was psychological warfare until the very end. Sleep well, husband, I whispered to the dark city. Tomorrow, the widow becomes the executioner. The morning of the wedding was bright and clear, a cruel contrast to the storm that was brewing in my heart. I woke up at dawn, not with anxiety, but with a strange, cold clarity. I showered, scrubbing my skin until it was pink, washing away the last remnants of the hiding, the fear, and the victimhood. I dried my short, platinum hair, styling it slick and modern. It was a warrior's cut. I applied my makeup with surgical precision. Foundation to even out the skin, contour to sharpen my cheekbones, and a bold, blood-red lip. I didn't cover the scar on my cheek this time. I traced it with a highlighter, making it shine. It was my proof. My receipt. I stepped into the white suit. It fit like a glove, hugging my waist and flaring slightly at the hips. I looked in the full-length mirror. I didn't see Mallory the doormat. I didn't see the woman who apologized for taking up space. I saw a stranger. A dangerous stranger. Donovan picked me up at 10 a.m. in a black SUV with tinted windows. He was wearing his best court suit, a silver fox of a man who looked ready to litigate God himself. You look. He paused, his eyes tearing up slightly. You look like your father. The day he won his biggest case. I feel like him, I said, sliding into the leather seat. The police are positioned at the venue, Donovan briefed me as we drove through the city. Plain clothes. They're acting as security. They won't move until you give the signal or until Garrett tries to run. He won't run, I said. He's too arrogant. He thinks he's won. We arrived at the hotel, the Grand Meridian. It was opulent, excessive, and tacky, everything Sabrina loved. The parking lot was full of luxury cars. The paparazzi were there, lurking in the bushes, hungry for a glimpse of the tragic groom finding love again. Ready? Donovan asked as we parked in the loading dock, away from prying eyes. More than anything, I said. We waited in the back of the SUV, watching the live feed on Donovan's tablet. The ceremony was starting. I saw my stepmother, Brenda, weeping fake tears in the front row, wearing a hat that looked like a dead bird. I saw Garrett standing at the altar, sweating, twitching, looking like a man waiting for a firing squad. And then, Sabrina walked down the aisle. She looked beautiful, I had to admit. But it was a hollow beauty. She looked triumphant, smug. She reached the altar and took Garrett's hand. "Dearly beloved," the officiant began. "We are gathered here today." My heart hammered against my ribs, but my breathing was steady. This was it. The moment I reclaimed my life. I opened the car door. The air smelled of expensive flowers and exhaust fumes. "Let's go," I said to Donovan. We walked through the service entrance, past the startled kitchen staff, and toward the heavy double doors of the ballroom. I could hear the officiant's voice muffled through the wood. To join this man and this woman in holy matrimony. I put my hand on the brass handle. The metal was cold. "Wait for the objection," Donovan whispered. "If anyone here has just 'cause why these two should not be joined." This was the part in movies where someone bursts in. It's a cliché. But clichés exist for a reason. Sometimes, they are the only way to break a narrative. I pushed the doors open. They were heavy, but my adrenaline made them feel like paper. They swung wide, hitting the stops with a loud thud. The light from the ballroom flooded the vestibule. The scent of roses and expensive perfume hit me. I stepped into the light. The sound of the doors opening was like a gunshot in the silent ballroom. Every head turned. 300 people, the elite of the city, Garrett's business partners, Sabrina's model friends, my father's old colleagues, twisted in their seats. At first, there was confusion. They saw a woman in a white suit, with short blonde hair and dark sunglasses. They didn't recognize me. Then, I took off the sunglasses. A gasp rippled through the room. It started in the back and rolled forward like a wave. I heard someone whisper, "Oh my God." I heard the sound of glass shattering as a waiter dropped a tray of champagne flutes. I didn't stop. I walked down the center aisle. Click. 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 The sound of my heels on the marble floor was the only sound in the room. I locked eyes with Garrett. He was standing at the altar, holding Sabrina's hands. He looked up. His face went through a transformation that was terrifying to behold. Confusion. Recognition. And then, pure, unadulterated horror. His skin turned the color of ash. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. His knees buckled. He actually grabbed Sabrina's veil to steady himself, ripping it from her head. "G-Ghost," he stammered, his voice high and thin. "No. No, no, no." Sabrina turned around. Her eyes went wide. She looked from me to Garrett, then back to me. She didn't faint. She looked furious. "Who invited her?" she screeched, her voice cracking. "Get her out of here." "Security." "I don't think security is going to help you, Sabrina," I said. My voice was calm, projected perfectly thanks to the acoustics of the room. I didn't need a microphone. Considering half of them are undercover police officers. I stopped 10 feet from the altar. I stood tall, my chin lifted, letting the light catch the scar on my cheek. "Hello, husband," I said. "You look like you've seen a ghost. But I'm afraid I'm very much flesh and blood." Garrett was hyperventilating. He clutched his chest. "Mallory?" "But..." I watched the cliff. "Yes," I said, my voice cutting through the air like a knife. "You watched me fall. You watched me hit the water. And you walked away to plan your wedding." The crowd erupted. Murmurs turned into shouts. Brenda stood up, knocking over her chair. "Mallory? Baby? You're alive? She tried to rush toward me, playing the relieved mother. I held up a hand, stopping her in her tracks. Don't, I said coldly. Don't pretend you're happy, Brenda. You're just worried about who's going to pay for your country club membership now. I turned back to Garrett. He had sunk to the floor, sitting on the steps of the altar, pulling at his collar. How, he wheezed. How are you here? Karma, Garrett, I said, taking a step closer. And a very strong fishing net. I looked at Sabrina. She was trembling, but her eyes were darting around, looking for an exit. You can't do this, she hissed. This is my day. It was never your day, Sabrina, I said. It was my funeral disguised as a party. And I decided to attend. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small remote control. I pointed it at the massive projection screen behind the altar, which was currently displaying a slideshow of Garrett and Sabrina's love story. You wanted to show everyone a video, Garrett? I asked. I took the liberty of updating the file. The room went deadly silent. Everyone held their breath. Garrett looked at the remote in my hand with the eyes of a condemned man looking at the switch of the electric chair. I smiled. A cold, hard smile. If you are still listening to this, I said, looking not at Garrett, but imagining the thousands of people who would eventually hear this story, please help me like the video and comment number 1 below, so I know you are amazing, and I understand that you are accompanying me throughout this journey. Your help is a huge encouragement, cheering me on. Please comment number 1 so I can recognize you, and now, listen to me continue telling my story. I pressed the button. The screen flickered. The sappy acoustic guitar music of their slideshow cut out, replaced by the hiss of static. Then, the audio filled the room. Goodbye, Mallory. It was Garrett's voice. Unmistakable. Then, a visual. It was grainy, taken from a long-distance lens, but clear enough. It was the footage Donovan's private investigator had managed to reconstruct from a tourist's drone footage we found later, a lucky break I hadn't even mentioned until now. It showed 2 figures on a cliff. One pushed the other. The ballroom gasped as one. A collective intake of breath that sucked the oxygen out of the room. Then, the screen changed. It was the hallway video from the night I played the ghost. I watched you fall. I watched you die. Garrett's voice screamed from the speakers, distorted with fear and rage. I did it for the money. I hated needing you. The video cut to the kitchen conversation between Garrett and Sabrina. If I go down, Sabrina, you go down with me. You're an accomplice to murder. I hit the pause button. The image frozen on the screen was Garrett's face, twisted in anger, gripping Sabrina's wrist. I lowered the remote. The silence in the room was heavy, suffocating. You could hear a pin drop. I looked at the guests. I saw shock. I saw disgust. I saw my father's old business partners looking at Garrett with pure loathing. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice steady. I apologize for interrupting the festivities. But I thought you should know that the groom is currently married. To me. And that the bride is his co-conspirator in attempted murder. Garrett was sobbing now, curled into a ball on the altar steps. He wasn't fighting. He was broken. But Sabrina? Sabrina was a survivor of a different kind. She realized the ship was sinking, and she wasn't about to drown. She spun on Garrett. She started kicking him with her satin heels. You liar, she screamed, her voice shrill and panicked. You told me it was an accident. You told me she slipped. Sabrina, stop, I said, bored. We all heard the tape. You scouted the location. You bought the tickets. He forced me. Sabrina yelled, turning to the crowd, her mascara running down her face. He's abusive. He threatened me. I was scared for my life. I didn't want to marry him. Please, someone help me. You seemed happy enough spending my money on that Porsche, I noted dryly. He made me buy it, she sobbed, playing the victim with Oscar-worthy dedication. Garrett finally looked up. His eyes were red, rimmed with madness. You witch, he spat at Sabrina. You came up with the idea. You said, if she wasn't here, we could have it all. You fed me the poison about how she looked down on me. Liar! Sabrina shrieked. She lunged at him, clawing at his face. It was pathetic. It was ugly. It was the end of their glamorous facade. That's enough, a deep voice boomed. Donovan stepped forward, followed by 6 plainclothes officers who pulled their badges. Garrett Thompson, Sabrina Vance, the lead officer announced. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and embezzlement. The officers moved in. They hauled Garrett up. He didn't resist. He looked at me one last time as they cuffed his hands behind his back. Mallory, he whispered. I loved you once. I looked him dead in the eye. No, Garrett, I said softly. You loved the way I made you feel important. There's a difference. They dragged him away. Sabrina was less cooperative. She was screaming, thrashing, threatening to sue everyone in the room. My mother, she yelled. Mom! Do something. Brenda was standing in the front row, clutching her purse. She looked at her daughter being handcuffed. She looked at me, standing tall and victorious. She looked at the wealthy guests staring at her with judgment. And Brenda did what Brenda always did. She saved herself. I didn't know, Brenda stammered, loud enough for everyone to hear. I had no idea. I am shocked. Officer, take her away. She has disgraced our family. Sabrina stopped screaming. She stared at her mother with a look of absolute betrayal. It was the same look I must have had on the cliff. You cow, Sabrina whispered. As the police led them out through the stunned crowd, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Donovan. You okay, kid? I took a deep breath. The air smelled of justice. I'm better than okay, Donovan, I said. But I have one more thing to say to my husband. The police paused near the exit with Garrett. I walked over to him. The guests parted like the Red Sea, watching the final act of the drama. Garrett looked pathetic. His tuxedo was rumpled, his face scratched from Sabrina's nails. Wait, I said to the officers. I want him to know why he did it. Garrett looked at me, confusion in his tear-filled eyes. What? You killed me for the trust fund, right? I asked. You thought if I died, the $5 million would transfer to you. It would have, he mumbled. The clause, age 40. You didn't read the whole trust, Garrett, I said, shaking my head. You only read the summary. You see, my father was a very smart man. He knew about men like you. He added a secondary clause. The unnatural death clause. Garrett blinked. What? If I die of natural causes, my spouse inherits, I explained, my voice loud and clear. But if I die under suspicious circumstances, or if there is any foul play suspected, the trust is immediately liquidated and donated to the shelter for battered women. Every single cent. Garrett's face went slack. Even if you had gotten away with it, I continued, leaning in close. Even if they never found my body. Even if you were never caught. You would have gotten nothing. Zero. You killed me for a check that would have bounced, Garrett. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He hadn't just committed a crime, he had committed a useless crime. All the plotting, the risk, the murder, it was for absolutely nothing. No, he whispered. No, that's not true. Donovan, is that true? Donovan stepped up beside me, smiling grimly. Drafted it myself, Garrett. Section 4, Paragraph B, the asshole clause, we call it internally. Garrett started to laugh. It was a high, broken sound. He laughed until he started to choke. He realized the cosmic joke of his own greed. I killed her for nothing, he giggled hysterically. For nothing. Get him out of here, the officer said, looking disgusted. They dragged him out, his laughter echoing down the hallway, sending shivers down the spines of everyone in the room. I turned back to the crowd. The silence was awkward now. These were people who had eaten at my table, who had judged me for being dull compared to Garrett. The bar is open, I said into the microphone, dropping it onto the floor. Drink up. It's on me. It's the last dime of mine you'll ever see. I walked out of the ballroom, head held high, leaving the ruins of my old life behind me. I walked straight to the hotel lobby where Brenda was trying to sneak out the side door. Going somewhere? I asked. Brenda jumped. Mallory. Sweetheart. I was just coming to find you. To hug you. Oh, thank God you're safe. She reached out to embrace me. I stepped back. Stop it, Brenda, I said tiredly. The show is over. Mallory, you have to believe me, she pleaded, her eyes darting around. I didn't know what they were planning. I'm a victim too. Sabrina, she's always been trouble. But you and I, we're family. We are not family, I said. Family doesn't let their stepdaughter be treated like a servant. Family doesn't steal college funds. And family certainly doesn't try to mooch off the murder of their kin. I have nowhere to go, Brenda whimpered. Sabrina and I gave up the lease on the condo to move into your house. If you kick me out. You're not moving into my house, Brenda, I said. You're not even allowed on the property. I've already filed a restraining order. Donovan has the papers. Donovan handed her a thick envelope. You have 24 hours to remove your personal effects from the guest cottage, Donovan said. After that, the locks change. And Brenda? If you try to contact Mallory again, we will audit every penny you spend of her father's allowance over the last 10 years. And we will find the fraud. Brenda went pale. She grabbed the envelope and ran. No hug. No apology. Just self-preservation. I watched her go. It didn't feel like triumph. It felt like taking out the trash. Necessary, but not joyful. You okay? Donovan asked again. I'm tired, I admitted, the adrenaline finally starting to fade, leaving my leg throbbing. I just want to go home. Not your house, Donovan said gently. It's a crime scene now. I know, I said. Take me to the ocean. The weeks following the wedding were a media circus. The zombie bride story was everywhere. My face, both the old, soft Mallory and the new, scarred Mallory, was on every tabloid cover. I refused all interviews. I let Donovan handle the press. I spent my time in the safe house, healing, thinking, and planning. The legal process was swift. The evidence was overwhelming. Garrett's confession to the ghost was admissible. The video footage was damning. And Sabrina turned state's witness faster than she could say Gucci. She testified against Garrett in exchange for a reduced sentence. She painted him as the mastermind, the manipulator. It was partially true, but watching her play the innocent flower on the stand was nauseating. However, the jury didn't buy her full innocence. She was sentenced to 8 years for conspiracy and fraud. Garrett got the book thrown at him. attempted murder, insurance fraud, embezzlement, grand larceny. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I attended every day. I sat in the front row, wearing my white suit. I wanted him to see me. I wanted to be the constant reminder of his failure. He never looked at me. Not once. He stared at the table, a broken, hollow shell of the arrogant man I had married. When the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, he didn't react. He just closed his eyes. Life sentence. No parole for 25 years. It was over. But there was still the matter of the house. I went back there once, after the police tape was removed. It smelled of stale air and bad memories. I walked through the rooms. I saw the spot where Garrett had packed my things. I saw the empty wine bottles they had drunk while celebrating my death. I didn't feel nostalgia. I felt revulsion. I called a real estate agent that afternoon. "Sell it," I said. "As is. Furniture and all." "But Mrs. Thompson, it's a masterpiece." "Your design." "It's a mausoleum," I corrected. "Sell it. And donate the proceeds to the St. Jude's Children's Hospital." "All of it?" "Every cent. I don't want dirty money. I kept the trust fund, that was my father's legacy, not Garrett's." "But the house, the cars, the things we had bought together?" I scorched the earth. Brenda tried to sue me for emotional distress, claiming my fake death caused her PTSD. Donovan laughed the case out of court before it even got a hearing. Last I heard, she was living in a trailer park in Nevada, working as a greeter at a casino. Sabrina was in a minimum security prison. I sent her a care package once, a bottle of cheap drugstore perfume and a book on ethics. Petty? Maybe. But it felt good. The hardest part was forgiving myself. For 10 years, I had let them treat me like a doormat. I had bought their love. I had looked the other way. I had ignored the red flags because I was so desperate for a family. Garrett pushed me, yes. But I had walked to the edge of the cliff willingly, hand in hand with him. I needed to forgive the girl who fell so the woman who rose could live. 6 months after the trial, I went to visit Garrett. Donovan advised against it. "He's toxic, Mallory. Let him rot." "I need to close the door," I said. "And I can't do that until I look him in the eye one last time without the police or a judge between us." The prison was gray and smelled of industrial cleaner and despair. I sat on one side of the plexiglass. Garrett was brought in. He looked terrible. His hair was thinning, his skin sallow. The expensive suits were replaced by an orange jumpsuit that hung loosely on his frame. He sat down and picked up the phone. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of the man I used to love. Or thought I loved. "Mallory," he said. His voice was raspy. "Garrett. You look different," he said, gesturing to my hair, my scar. "I am different." "Did you come to gloat?" he asked, a hint of his old bitterness surfacing. "No. I came to give you this." I held up the divorce decree against the glass. It was finalized. "I signed it," I said. "You're free. Legally, at least." He stared at the paper. "Does it matter?" "I'm in a cage." "It matters to me," I said. "I'm taking back my name. I'm Mallory Vance again. Thompson doesn't exist anymore." Garrett looked down. "I'm sorry, Mel. I really am. I got lost. The debt, the pressure. I just wanted to be someone." "You were someone," I said softly. "You were my husband. That used to be enough." He flinched. "I know. I messed up." "You didn't just mess up, Garrett. You tried to end me. And you know what the saddest part is? If you had just asked me, if you had just told me you were in trouble, I would have helped you. I would have paid the debt. We could have worked it out. He looked up, tears streaming down his face. I know. That's what kills me every night. I know you would have saved me. But I was too proud to ask. And that pride cost you your life, I said. I stood up. Mallory, wait, he pleaded. Do you hate me? I thought about it. I thought about the cold water. The pain. The betrayal. No, I said honestly. Hate takes energy, Garrett. And I don't have any energy left for you. You're just a stranger to me now. A lesson I learned the hard way. Will you visit again? No, I said. This is goodbye. For real this time. I hung up the phone. I walked out of the visiting room. I didn't look back. Walking out of the prison gates, the sun hit my face. It felt warmer than it had in years. I took a deep breath. The air didn't smell like Chanel No. 5 or despair. It smelled like freedom. Life after revenge is quiet. The adrenaline fades, and you are left with the silence of your own existence. I moved out of the city. I couldn't stand the noise, the memories, the prying eyes. I bought a small plot of land on the coast, not far from where Silas lived. I hired a contractor to build a house. Not a mansion. A home. Small, sustainable, open to the light. I designed every inch of it myself. It was the first time I had drawn a blueprint in a year. My hand was steady. I reconnected with Silas. He was grumpy as ever, but he let me help him fix his roof. We would sit on his porch, drinking bad coffee, watching the ocean. He never asked about the trial. He just asked about the tides. You done fighting? He asked one day. I think so, I said. Good. Fighting is for survival. Living is for peace. I used the trust fund, the money Garrett had killed for, to start the Phoenix Foundation. It was a nonprofit dedicated to providing legal and financial aid to women trapped in abusive or financially coercive marriages. I wanted to be the safety net I never had. We hired lawyers like Donovan to help women protect their assets, to get restraining orders, to find safe housing. I threw myself into the work. It was healing. Every woman I helped felt like I was saving a piece of myself. One afternoon, Donovan came to visit my new construction site. He was wearing jeans, which was a shock. Nice view, he said, looking out at the Pacific. It is, I said, wiping sawdust from my hands. I brought you something, he said. He handed me a small box. Inside was a blue toy rabbit. Old, dirt-stained. I dug it up, he said, smiling. Thought you might want it back. Proof that you've always been good at burying things and digging them up when you need them. I laughed, tears pricking my eyes. Thank you, Uncle Don. Also, he said, shifting awkwardly. I'm retiring. Handing the firm over to the partners. Oh. What will you do? Thinking of moving to the coast, he said, looking at me with a softness I hadn't seen before. Maybe try fishing. I hear there's a good spot near here. I smiled. It wasn't a proposal. It wasn't a declaration. It was just a possibility. A gentle opening of a door I thought I had locked forever. I know a guy who can teach you, I said. But be warned, his coffee is terrible. I can handle terrible coffee, Donovan said. As long as the company is good. We stood there, watching the waves crash against the rocks below. The same ocean that had almost killed me was now the soundtrack to my new life. I wasn't lonely. I had Silas. I had Donovan. I had my work. And most importantly, I had myself. A year to the day of the accident, I walked down to the beach below Silas's cabin. The tide was low. The rocks were exposed, sharp and jagged, covered in barnacles. It was hard to believe I had survived that fall. Looking up at the cliff, it seemed impossibly high. I was wearing a simple linen dress. My hair had grown out a bit, a soft blonde bob that danced in the wind. The scar on my cheek had faded to a thin white line, a permanent reminder of the fissure that had split my life in two. I held a small velvet pouch in my hand. Inside was my wedding ring. The police had returned it to me after it was logged as evidence. Garrett had kept it in his safe, alongside the fake will. He couldn't bring himself to sell it, or maybe he kept it as a trophy. It was a beautiful ring. Vintage diamond, platinum setting. I used to stare at it and feel loved. Now, it just felt heavy. Cold. Silas was sitting on a piece of driftwood nearby, whittling. "You gonna throw it?" he asked. "I think so," I said. "Gold doesn't float," he reminded me. "I know. I want it to sink. I wanted to go back to where I was supposed to end." I walked to the water's edge. The Pacific Ocean was calm today, a vast expanse of blue breathing against the shore. I thought about Garrett. I wondered if he was looking at the sky through the bars of his cell right now. I hoped he was. I hoped he finally understood that you cannot own a person. You cannot steal a soul. I thought about Sabrina. I hoped she was learning that beauty is not currency and sisterhood is not a competition. I opened the pouch. The diamond sparkled in the sun. It looked innocent. "I forgive you," I whispered to the ring. "Not for him. But for me. I forgive myself for loving the wrong man. I forgive myself for being blind." I pulled my arm back and threw it. It arched through the air, catching the light one last time, before splashing into the waves. A tiny ripple, and then, gone. I felt a weight lift off my chest that I hadn't even realized I was carrying. I turned back to Silas. He nodded. "Good throw," he said. "Thanks." "Coffee?" "Only if I make it," I said. He laughed, a rusty sound. "Deal." As we walked back up the beach, I stopped and looked at the horizon one last time. Betrayal breaks you. There is no denying that. It shatters your trust, your heart, your reality. But in the breaking, you find out what you are made of. You find the steel beneath the skin. I was pushed off a cliff. I was left for dead. I was erased. But I clawed my way back. Not to reclaim my old life, but to build a new one. A life where I am the architect. A life where I am the hero, not the victim. My name is Mallory Vance. I am a survivor. And this is just the beginning. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to share, but I hope it reminds you that no matter how far you fall, you can always climb back up. If this story resonated with you, or if you've ever had to rebuild your life from the ashes, please give this video a like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of justice and survival. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and remember, the best revenge is living well. Goodbye.